Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Today I'm going to do something fun because I need to stop porting things to ES6, but I wanted to show you how to use the WCFactory tooling to take something from CodePen and turn it into a vanilla JS element. And so you can get WCFactory at github.com, elmsln, WCFactory. It's all of our tooling we're using to create our element library. When you stamp that out, if you want to see an example of the mono repo that it produces, you can see the LRN Web Components one. And so the elements that it creates is in here. Like we've got, upwards of 150 or so. So I'm going to add a new one to that based on something from CodePen, because I found that CodePen does a really good job of kind of by force containerizing the thing you're working on. So I found this neat loader. I like it a lot more than the loader that we have currently in Elm. So these nice little hexagons. They bubble in, they bubble out. Now, this is using SCSS. I just want to use CSS for the purposes of this, so I copied the CSS, cleaned it up a little bit. So I just took the same thing, simplified it a bit in a fork on CodePen. So you see the guts of this is just class loader, a whole bunch of hex and a loader, and then in the CSS we've got this .hex class. Lots of .hex class. But the hexagon itself with the before and after, right, is pretty much, that's entirely what's driving these hexagons. So if I delete this, you should see them all go away, right? Okay. So let's turn this into a web component instead of just this CodePen. So what I'm going to do, I already have WCFactory installed. I'm going to run, and I have it placed in a company, is the directory I have named. So when you run WCF start, you'll get something that looks like this. It's a place to store and manage all of these projects. So I'm going to do WCF element, which is for give me a new element. I'm going to pick a vanilla zero dependency custom element. Element name is going to be hexagon, we'll say. Because what I'm thinking is if I just make a hexagon, a CSS hexagon as an element, then I could reuse that hexagon places. And then from that I could make like a hexagon loader, and the hexagon loader just leverages the hexagon. So that's kind of the abstraction that we're going for here. Let's make it less hexagon loader. So that'll actually be the whole project, but then inside of that we'll make the individual hexagon that you could technically use. Okay, so hexagon loader. Describe purpose of this element, a simple VJS element that is for showing something is loading. Okay, I don't want to use Sass in this. Yes, I'm going to have custom properties. No, I don't want this hooked up to hex. There's no confusion there. Let's add a property. So property, first one to add, say it'd be color, and it would be a string-based value. And its default, we'll say, is orange. And yes, even though that's not going to be fully realized, I'll have to kind of undo parts of those for the vanilla element. We're just going to go with color at the moment, and this is on the loader element itself. So we might want like size, because I have that on the Elms loader. The default value we'll say is medium. Yes and no. Okay, and then no. Those will just be the two properties we have. So the tooling is going to run, and it's going to produce a new vanilla element that we can work on today. So I'm going to pause while this just gets my dependencies. All right, so it's resolving those dependencies. When you run this, this process will go a lot faster. As I mentioned, I have like upwards of 150 some elements at the moment in this repo, and so it has to kind of dedupe all of the package JSONs together so that it can install everything in the most efficient way possible. Efficient here is file size wise, so that instead of 150 copies of some test library, you only have one, effectively, because it's a mono repo. All right, so once it finishes that, it's going to get into the element itself and run an initial build, just so that you have the files in a form that you would expect to find them when working on this element. And it's going to run build, which is a Polymer build routine, which just kind of analyzes and smashes things together so that it works in modern browsers. So there we go. And then it's going to say, hey, copy and paste this to work on it. So I'm going to do that. It's going to kick off. It runs yarn start in the directory. And as a result, I get something that looks like this. So we see we have hexagon-loader. Got these files here. I've got a place to work on a demo for it. And then I've got documentation that's kicked out based on the process. So you can see the property color, default value is orange. Size, default value is medium. So looking at how we then work on this, I'm going to open the src directory. We'll open properties.json. You'll see that those values come from here. Now, as I mentioned, because this is a JS or a vanilla element, this reflected attribute observer stuff isn't necessarily going to do anything. So I'm going to take that part out. That has more implications in Polymer and some of the other libraries. And then I'm going to put a comment in here so that we can see it in our little documentation. Color to make this element. Make the loader, I should say. Okay, and then for size, we've got the relative size of this loader. Options small, medium, large, something like that. Okay, and so that should largely be enough to get going. Whenever I make a change, you'll see it's analyzing and it's merging the files together in the background so I can keep working. If I refresh this page now, we'll see my little comments are in place there. So that's kind of the way you end up working on this. And then I can hit demo and I can see, hey, there's nothing here. So this is what it should do, to be perfectly honest. So now let's go over to this repo here. So I'm going to take the HTML, that is the structure of this tag. I'm going to go in VS Code, and because of the tooling, you see we have this nice relationship where we have our CSS, our JavaScript, and HTML all separate. So I'm going to paste in here just all those hexes. We might clean this up a bit later, but and then we'll take all the CSS involved, and we will close that file. Go into the CSS here. There we go. Paste those in. And we're not going to set this on HTML anymore. See, we have a CSS variable for current color. We're going to set that on the host. We'll do orange as the default, sure. And then what we could do as well is we could say, instead of current color, we should probably do like hexagon loader color, okay. And then the default for that would be orange in the event it wasn't, this variable didn't resolve or something. Okay, put that in there, and then hexagon loader color up above, paste that in. Okay, so then this is effectively saying the default value is going to be orange for this. Let's take off this transform portion. We don't need that at the moment. And then let's look at our demo. So go to the element demo, index HTML. I don't need any of the guts inside of it. And we're just going to do that. So now when I go over here and hit refresh, hey, loading demo. Right, so that is your most basic case here, that you should be able to do that. Then, nice thing about this is now that I have this as a custom element, instead of a little CSS snippet block, I should be able to throw down a whole bunch of them, hit refresh, and voila. right? So right there is a great example of an advantage to a web component in this case, because of this encapsulating all of the styles, the JavaScript, etc., for this hexagon. Now I can just stamp it down, a half bajillion times. So let's use an element in an element, show how I would then unpack this, right? So if what I just did is the kind of the very first step that you would do in translating something to a web component, now we're going to leverage why this specification is so powerful. So in my element, this hexagon loader, I'm going to create a folder called lib. And this is my convention. This is not like a standard. I like to place things in a lib directory, short for library, that are just things that help with whatever this element is. If the main scope of this element is hexagon loader, right, it's to provide a loader, this is the library where I'm going to have all those other assets that might help in pursuit of that. So I mentioned previously with the CSS, right, the CSS of this has hex, and then a hex is on here a whole ton, right? So class hex. Instead of that, it would be really cool if I could write in here hexagon, and I would get a hexagon. That would be pretty sick. And then for each of these, I could replace it with a hexagon. And it's a silly tag, but that's the point, is you can write these silly tags. So let's do a search and replace in here. I'm going to search for div class hex, and I'm going to search for ogon, or replace it with rather ogon. Search. We'll see 91 results. Holy crap, there are a lot of those. All right, so replace. Yep. Okay, so now I have hexagon. And the advantage of what I'm doing here is I'm just leveraging the specification to basically produce a new element that I could utilize. So as a result of what I'm going to be doing here is then in the future I could just call hexagon if I needed a hexagon for some reason. It would be also nice if I didn't write gon, right? So semantically, this is very important part, is spell things correctly, everybody out there. So do hexagon, I'll do hexagon, there we go. Okay, update, there we go. So now we have hexagon. Okay, now I need to actually make a hexagon tag and define that in order to use it. So the first step to that is, now I know what one of these looks like, but if I go into the src directory and look at hexagon loader here, we'll see what a vanilla element looks like. So in this case, I'm exporting hexagon loader in case anyone wanted to use it imperatively. You can see that it is a class extension of HTML element. And then you also see this little line here. So this is specific to our tooling. You don't remove that line because it helps the tooling combine all of these. So even though you're working in them as CSS, JavaScript, and HTML, and a properties file here, what the browser is loading is up a level, not in the source directory. It's this hexagon-loader.js. And if we look in that, we'll see that that block of hey, don't replace this has been replaced with the HTML and CSS required to make this thing work. So this is, a legitimate web component. It also is defining properties on it, and then it's wiring those together effectively. So what we could do is we could actually copy and kind of reverse engineer this element into being just a hex-gon element. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take this hexagon loader copy, and we're going to paste it into lib. And then I'm going to rename this to hex-gon. All right. Now I need it to be hexagon. So basically everywhere that there's hexagon loader, I'm going to go in and just quickly replace this. Now the tooling is not going to pick up and automatically combine files for this lib directory, right? So if you want to leverage the tooling fully, if this is actually a full standalone project that would make sense on its own, which a hexagon is sort of a silly example. I mean, it could, but not for what I'm doing. Then you could just create a new project that lives in parallel. That's why we have 100+ elements in our element library. But So a simple CSS-based hexagon. Okay, and then instead of class hexagon loader, this will be hexagon. All right, we've got our license on there. We export hexagon. We're going to leave that part. We're going to get rid of the loader portion, and then all of this logic go away, because we don't want to animate the individual hexagon. The hexagon doesn't care about, the notion of animation, but we do care about its before and after. We care about having again, something that's correctly spelled, my God. Hexagon loader with the class name we're going to pass in for the color, right? So maybe we care about the color of the individual hexagon. In this case, right, so we'll take out the word loader. This would just be hexagon color here. And then all we would have inside of this hexagon, as far as the HTML itself, it's not going to be loader, it's going to be literally just hexagon. Go and get rid of the div. Whoops, it's not hexagon like that. Silly. It is that original div class equals hex and div. All right, so all this is doing is applying some styling to this hex here. This is a little weird, but just to illustrate that this is possible. I'm going to we'll leave color on there just to do it. Don't really need to. Hexagon loader. So this is the name of the tag. And this is not required as part of the specification. I just kind of like to do it that way for consistency. So the loader. Get rid of that. Okay. So I need to get rid of the word loader basically everywhere. Down below we see we have loader. So this is the part that actually teaches the browser that this, what the definition of this custom element is, which then fires up this, class object. In that way, every time it sees a hex-a-gon tag, it knows, hey, I should operate this way. So we've got that. We've exported a hexagon now. Now, how would we use this in our loader? Because our loader is busted. If we look at our loaders JS file, I need to pull in and incorporate this hexagon. So the way I do that is through ES modules import statements. So I can do import, and I can do, it has to be relative to where you are. So in this case, it's going to be a .lib/hexagon.js. So if you imagine this file is going to live at the root. Oh, sorry, I actually put that in the wrong place. I have to edit the source, not this file. So if we go to the source file, there we go, we put our import statement in. It's not relative to the source file, it's relative to where it'll be compiled, which is here, right? And so from there, I want the front end to go ./lib hexagon.js. There we go, hexagon.js. So that will ensure that the browser has been taught what that is. I'm not going to reference it directly anywhere for the purposes of this video, and I'm going to clean this up after probably. But so let's see what we have at the moment, right? We have all these hexagon tags. And now when we refresh the page, let's see, inspect. Let's see what we've got going on here. So we've got hexagon loader. In its shadow root, we've got loader. And then in there, we've got hexagon with color equals orange, and then inside of there we can see class hex, and then it's told display none. So there's something inside of there that I actually, I guess the default is that it doesn't display, so it can like animated swipe across it. Right, so I am going to have to clean this up a bit in order to translate it down into a hexagon, but you can see now I've stamped these out, a whole ton of them. Another neat thing you can play with here is, right, so this is an attribute. Now, I should be able to, because it's an attribute, kind of mess with the CSS of that element. And so if I go to Hexagon and using this host, so this host means like the element itself. So I can go in here and I can say color equals orange. And then if color equals orange, let's get rid of this CSS variable. We're going to do more like this, like if that's orange, then the dot hex here is actually going to be background color, and we're going to do orange. And let's set up a purple or whatever. Orange, purple, blue. We'll do purple, blue. Okay, and then down here with my CSS variable background color, we'll get rid of that portion. And now you see I also have the before and after being defined here, which means I need to define those on here as well. So that would be host bracket color equals blue, and then dot hex before and this dot hex after, the same thing. All right, hex after, and then I would need the same little logic here for these. So we'll change this from blue to orange, purple, purple, purple. Okay, so now the background color is going to get set based on the attribute. It's effectively what I'm getting here because I'm placing this custom attribute on that tag. So let's get rid of that display none portion. And let's go in here, let's refresh, see what we just did. So there's our orange loader. Now if I inspect, we find our orange loader. Is that the one that's on top visually? One of these is there. Okay. Our orange loader here. Inspect you. Orange. Oop. If we make this blue. Hey, there we go. Purple. Sweet. So you can see how that's simple, like playing on attributes and pegging those attributes to CSS, CSS selectors, that you can allow someone, and now at the same time, if I say green, now it goes back to orange, because that was the default that was put in place here, I believe. Or actually, no, then it's probably invisible. It's just showing an element that's below it because I have them all stacked at the moment. So you can see kind of the way that we would abstract these things out. You break something into its little pieces so that you can leverage it further. So I'm going to have to mess around with the loading animation, obviously, and having a million hexagons in here is weird. But that's kind of the general idea of what ends up happening here. Is that I would take these calls for hex in this case, all of these. Right, I probably need to now just replace anything that references, dot hex, as we saw there, right? Probably just needs to be replaced with a call to the custom tag itself, which we can do. So this will hopefully bring back my animation to wire up that loader color as well, potentially. So let's find all the dot hexes. See, there's a bunch of them because of the nth type of call here in order to get those to animate in a nice little wave and keep these spaced appropriately. In fact, we could do a search and replace. Search for hex type of, and we'll replace it with this hexagon. Yep, 26 more occurrences. Yay, saved you all time waiting. So there we go. We can see it's animation of type scale it, right? And now that's applied to 37 different potential rows here. Let's see if that just worked. That would be fantastic. Whoa, get a different animation style, that's for sure. But you can see them all sort of animating. That's interesting. So we've got our relative positioning. Let's see what we've got in Hexagon. I might want to take these, whoops, not the style part off. I might want to take off the host defaulting to block. And I also might want to, let's see what that does. I may want to just make it the element itself instead of the hex class down inside of it. So let's try that. Let's do, this was display none before, right? This will kind of prove that it's, yeah, not targeting. So now instead of .hex in this element, I want to do host. And we can do host before, host after. And then instead of class hex, we just got like a div, like an empty div, really. Let's see what that does. Nothing. Sweet. So clearly I'm going to have to clean this up so that we have the actual, oh, I see what the colors and things are. Okay. Clearly I'm going to have to clean this up so we have the actual, you know, element in question and animating correctly with rows. But then when I have this done, and I'll post the link to the finished web component, I'll have it, you know, published, and it'll be something that everybody can use. But so let's see what that publishing workflow is. Let's say you wanted that to be your loader, which is a little hypnotic, a little crazy. So let's say that was actually the thing, and I wanted to make a release. So the way I would release this then is, in this case, I'm going to Control C. So I've got Hexagon loader here. I'm going to do, I like to use a Github Gui, not because I don't know how to run the commands. It's just to see what element, you know, what has been created here. So you can see with my Hexagon loader, I've created all these different files that have been made by the tooling. I have a license that appropriately licenses it. You can see I have demos. I have that little mini documentation site. It even compiles it to these different sources for me. So what I want to do if I want to publish this to NPM is now I'm going to do yarn run build. And yarn run build is going to run our build routine, which will clean up some of those files. It'll basically ensure that the assets would work in different build routines that people have, whether that's compiled for Node or the web or UMD, AMD module-based systems. Okay, so that'll update a few files. You see we get one new file out of that. Then I'm going to commit these files to version control. So added a Hexagon style loader. And then this will actually make me do one more commit. Okay, so then there's a pre-commit hook that's built into our tooling that will then add this to a test bed so that you can start to set up structured tests against all of your elements. If I have any JavaScript errors in that code that was there, it wouldn't have allowed me to commit it, so it's got some nice little cleanup things as well for keeping things tidy. Test bed edition for Hexagon -loader. Okay, now I'm going to sync that up, and then, which is just, you know, I've committed the code, now it's getting pushed up to GitHub. So now the code's available on GitHub, but that doesn't publish to NPM. In order to do larger, you know, build routine, or sorry, routine releases of all of your elements, what I would do is I would do this. I'd go down to this layer here, and at the actual, you know, factory level, I would run yarn, or sorry, it's not yarn, it's Lerna publish. And Lerna publish will ask some questions. And I'm not actually going to publish it this way, I just want you to see what that looks like. So you'll have had to log in to NPM, which is like npm login. It's in the direction. So then you'll see it looks at and says, hey, you have changes since you last released this stuff. Select a new version. We're currently on 32, and then I can say, hey, patch version, and it's going to be 33, and it will loop through every project and re-release it on npm.js.com at that version. Now, I'm not going to do it that way because this is a new element that I've added. And so this is, you know, the more manual intervention way if you were to do it this way. So I'm going to go back to my Hexagon loader directory, and I'm going to run npm publish. And npm publish is going to take the assets that are in that directory, and it's going to create a release at 0032, matching everything else. So now, because this has been roped in via the tooling, when I work on the next element and I go, all right, we made some changes as a team to 100 of these elements. Let's do a full publish, and we'll say everything is released at version 0.0.36 or whatever. Then when I run learn and publish, it'll loop through. It'll already be aware of what Hexagon Loader is, and it'll throw it up to npm at a new version. So what did that do? If I go to npmjs.com, now if I search for LRN web components / Hexagon Loader, there we go. So created this record in the registry with npm.js. You can see all the little documentation associated with it. If you want to get this loader and fix it, if I haven't fixed it by the time it's at a new release, then you could get, you can see where the source is for this. You can get this by grabbing this, right? So you can install it, and then it will just give you our Hexagon loader for you to leverage. Then if you want to pull it into your own projects, right, you could pull in the Hexagon loader and then build from there. So thank you for watching today. If you have any questions, make sure to hit up BTO Pro on Twitter or pretty much any social platform for that matter. See ya.